And moving to the surgical patient, of course, the progressive curve. Uh, what are some of the things that's going to lead you to surgery, and what are you doing at usually what approaches are you taking and things like that?
Yeah, so if you are going to proceed to surgery, you got to have a threshold. Most people's threshold is somewhere between 45 and 50 degrees, depending on the surgeon. But we all agree that that's approximately the threshold. If we're going to do surgery, the gold standard for surgery still is posterior spinal fusion with instrumentation, just like you see on the screen here. And the gold standard these days is to use all pedicle screw constructs, meaning pedicle screws into the vertebral body. You don't necessarily have to go into every level, but using all pedicle screws as opposed to using what was used in the past, which is hook constructs or hybrid constructs. So that's something that would be standard of care. There are other options available. Anterior spinal fusion about 10 to 15 years ago was very popular, but that's less often done now, partially because of morbidity for going through the chest or the lumbar spine, and partially because it's technically more challenging. Um, and then there's newer technologies on the horizon. So in a growing kid, there's a new technology called the anterior vertebral body tether. Kids who are growing, basically we're using the Hutter-Volkmann law to help correct the spine over time. Orthopedics really only has two laws, Wolff's Law and Hutter-Volkmann. Wolff's Law is like in adults and in trauma. Wolff's Law means, the bone responds to the amount of stress you put on it. So these kung fu masters that are punching wood all day, that's why they can, punch through wooden boards. If I try to do that, I break my hand, because they've been doing it all day, every day. Their bones are super strong. In kids, it's different though. In kids, we don't think about Wolff's Law nearly as much as we think about this Hutter-Volkmann law. And that's the law of physes. Basically, growing bone, physes, it responds more positively. It'll grow better if it's under tension than if it's under compression. So as you can imagine, if a scoliosis is happening, the worse the scoliosis gets in a growing child, the more compression they're going to get on the concave side of that curve, and the worse it's going to get. It's kind of like this kind of wicked loop. Um, and so what the tether does is it offloads that concave side. So to make that Hutter-Volkmann principle kind of come to play, you're offloading the compressive side, putting tensile forces on it, and
Hmm.
you're compressing the other side, the convex side. The best kind of, I love Michael Jordan, and the best kind of analogy I can give to it, Michael Jordan's dad's not that tall, but apparently when he was a kid and he was growing, he would be hanging from the tree out front of his house all day. And so he got to be 6'6". I don't know if this is a true story, but it illustrates the point of the Hutter-Volkmann principle.
Okay. All right. Um, yeah,
Interesting.
and just a thought. I'm just kind of curious. Do you ever do any kind of corrective surgeries? I know in children, you know, if they come acutely, but if this problem kind of comes later due to maybe degeneration or they start having like these kyphotic deformities and things like that, do you ever treat the adult population as well?
Yeah, so to me, a kid is a kid who is kind of before adolescence. So those are the kids that aren't adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. We treat those differently than the teenagers that you're talking about. Growing kids, I will usually treat with a brace until I can't anymore. Then surgery happens. And then kids who are done growing, those are the kids I actually consider adults. As soon as your bones are done growing, to me, physiologically, you're an adult. And you can treat with spinal fusion if you have to. And then some of the kids are older. So, I have kids that are like 20 years old. Those kids sometimes have really bad curves, maybe are from international, they've been neglected, and the curves are so big and so stiff that they won't get better just by loosening things up in the back using your implants. Sometimes we actually have to remove vertebra and then, kind of disassemble the spine and put it back together again. And that's like a vertebral column resection. We do those as well. And those are difficult, technically challenging operations. Just doing that, that's basically just an osteotomy, just like you would do, let's say in trauma, you have a malunion, you have a, valgus femur, you would do like a closing wedge osteotomy of the femur to make that not valgus anymore. We're doing the same thing in the spine with a vertebral column resection. We just have to do it around the spinal cord and nerves to make sure that people don't get paralyzed. But it's the same principle.
Much more higher risk.
Yeah, definitely higher risk and takes longer, but it's
Yeah.
exactly the same principle.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
And,
spine surgeon's dream. Those
know,
big,
right?
long 13-hour cases.
Yeah.
I tell you, I love doing those cases, but let me tell you, if I see like a 50-degree curve, that also makes me happy, because I know that I'm not going to be sore the day after.
Yeah.